Why on earth would anyone want to be a WWE announcer? Not only is Vince McMahon constantly yelling in your ear to shill whatever corporate sponsor the company shacked up with that week, but there's also a very real risk that your workspace could be destroyed by a bunch of rampaging wrestlers. In the long history of muscular dudes and dudettes getting chucked through a desk made out of exploding cardboard, a few instances stand out above the rest. And wouldn't you know it, we've got them right here. Lucky you. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 greatest announce table spots in WWE history. Join us. Number 10, Hart's Mold Breaker. Bret Hart was an innovator in many ways during his career, helping to bring technical wrestling to WWE's main event, pioneering realistic selling in the company, and being the first person in recorded history to look good while wearing wraparound shades. You can also add first person to go through a WWE commentary desk to that list, as that is precisely what happened when he took on Diesel at the 1995 Survivor Series. As the Hitman struggled to get back inside the ring from the apron, Big Daddy Cool pounced and shoved his opponent backwards, sending him crashing through the announce table, which in those days was a regular table with some cloth on it. Not only was this moment historic, but it still looks great. The way Hart slams clumsily through the wood adds an air of realism and spontaneity to the moment, making it seem as if something has gone wrong. Also, that guy falling off his chair is just classic. What a plonker. This is the table bump against which all others are measured, and it still stands out after all these years. Cheers, Bret. Hope you didn't have to pull too many splinters out your back. Number 9, the Big Dog Showstopper. After being upstaged by Seth Rollins' cash-in at WrestleMania 31, Roman Reigns needed a new opponent who could help him find his footing by putting on athletic matches that, oh wait, he's just got into a feud with the Big Show. Show was put into a last man standing match with the Big Dog at Extreme Rules 2015, with all the conversation surrounding how he was going to keep such a gigantic opponent down for the 10 count. This despite the fact that the world's largest athlete had lost several last man standing matches in the past, including one to Shane McMahon of all people. One highlight of what turned out to be a pretty decent little battle came when Reigns ran up a set of stairs to charge into Show, who was standing atop the announcer's desk. This sent both participants crashing through the other table, leaving them both in a crumpled heap. This kind of spot had been done before, but seeing two men of such substantial girth go flying through the air like this was a sight to behold. Number 8, AJ's Phenomenal Flight. Almost exactly a year after his clash with the Big Show, Reigns was now the defending WWE champion, and his challenger was the complete opposite of Paul White. AJ Styles had stepped up to challenge the former Shield member with their first title match set for Payback, a pay-per-view famous for, well, nothing really. Despite such an underwhelming stage, both men pulled out all the stops, lending some much-needed credibility to Reigns as the top guy. The most spectacular moment of the match came when Roman was stood outside the ring and Styles was inside of it, with some fiendish thoughts going through that soccer mum head of his. With the sort of reckless abandon only afforded to people who think the earth is flat, Styles launched himself at his target with a phenomenal forearm, landing right on the money and sending Reigns splattering through the table in a thoroughly satisfying visual. Massive props to both men for being willing to take such a risky spot on. Styles would bust it out again during his feud with Shinsuke Nakamura, but talking about that would just remind everyone of how bad that episode turned out, so let's move on. Number 7, Rock's double finisher. Whilst Backlash 2000 might be best remembered for that insane pop Stone Cold Steve Austin got when he came out during the main event, it turns out there was an entire Rock vs Triple H match that happened before that. Who knew? Before he got some assistance from the Texas Rattlesnake, Rocky was in dire straits as the evil McMahon-Helmsley gang had stacked the deck against him. Shane McMahon was the match's referee and was doing everything in his power to keep the WWE title around his brother-in-law's waist. Unfortunately for the boy wonder, things didn't go quite to plan. The Great One had the game in position for a rock bottom on top of the announce table when Shane attempted to intervene. This led to the boss's son getting put in the same position before both he and Trips were driven through the table with a jumbo-sized finisher. Cue an all-time great reaction shot from Vince, just look at his face. As entirely unrealistic as this moment was, it was awe-inspiring to watch three men crash through one table, sending pieces of it flying around ringside. Number 6, Shane's Texas-sized plummet. When he's not being beaten up by movie stars, Shane McMahon likes to relax by reading books, playing with his kids, and jumping off the top of very high things. Shane has taken some pretty intense leaps of faith over the years, but perhaps the most famous, or infamous, was that time he tried to murder The Undertaker at WrestleMania 32. Even though the build to this match was all over the place, who remembers the lockbox, and the majority of the action was about what you would expect from two middle-aged men who weren't full-time wrestlers, one moment in this Hell in a Cell encounter will ensure that it lives on forever. With Taker splayed out across the announce table, Shane scaled the satanic structure before flinging himself towards his prone victim. Sadly, the dead man wasn't as dead as he appeared, so got out of the way just before McMahon's body splattered into the desk like he was in a Looney Tunes cartoon. Nobody expected Shane to do something like this in his first match in 7 years, as the sight of him falling to his doom reminded everyone what made him such a special performer in the first place. Number 5, Undertaker's Flying Chokeslam. Our trilogy of Shane O'Mac getting his ass kicked concludes with this truly beautiful spot from the insane main event of King of the Ring 2000. World Champion Triple H was teaming with Shane and Vince to take on The Rock and the Brothers of Destruction in a match where he could lose the title without being pinned. What began as a fairly structured 6-man soon broke down, with Shane about to hit Rock with a top rope move before Taker caught him. The maneuver that followed couldn't have gone any better. The American Badass leapt off the apron, flinging Shane over his head and planting him through the announce desk with one of the gnarliest looking chokeslams you will ever see. He even managed to land on his feet. Everything about this spot had to be perfect, otherwise it could have gone so badly wrong. Instead, everyone was on their A game, resulting in one of the sweetest table breaks of all time. Number 4, Hardy's Super Swanson. Perhaps no wrestler in history has made a career out of crazy high spots quite like Jeffrey Nero Hardy. The face-painted warrior has thrown caution to the wind so many times that I'm amazed he's got any of it left, hitting a who's who of opponents with dangerous moves from the top rope, off various bits of the arena, and of course from the top of a ladder. One of Hardy's most terrifying ladder dives, which is really saying something, came during his excellent SummerSlam main event with CM Punk in 2009. With a straight-edge superstar laid out across the announce table, the charismatic Enigma slowly climbed up a gigantic ladder as people in the crowd quickly realized what they were about to witness. With all the grace of a gazelle with a death wish, Hardy casually fell from the top, shifting his body at the very last second to deliver the Swanton Bomb to end all Swanton Bombs. Everything about this spot is just stunning. The height of the ladder, the nonchalant nature of the dive, both men selling it like they'd been hit by a train. Pure wrestling insanity at its very finest. Number 3, Orton and Batista slay the dragon. Imagine if either Randy Orton or Batista had won the main event of WrestleMania 30 instead of Daniel Bryan. There wouldn't be a New Orleans anymore, fans would have razed it to the ground. Thankfully for the state of Louisiana, that didn't happen, but Bryan was very nearly taken out of action ahead of his legendary title win. The former Evolution buddies decided to work together to take the bearded goat out of the equation, setting him up for a brutal finisher combo on the announce tables. With Batista on one table, he hurled Bryan with a Batista bomb straight into the waiting arms of the Viper, who hit a picture-perfect RKO on his opponent through the second broadcast desk. Seeing that both men would go to such extremes to knock Bryan out showed just how much of a threat they thought he was, and only served to make his comeback later on in the match even more triumphant. Spare a thought for Randy's lower back during this spot, by the way, as you can clearly see him landing right on top of a monitor and then writhing around in pain afterwards. Not ideal, that. Number 2, Triple H's Deadman Destroyer. You know what sucks? Most of WrestleMania 27. You know what doesn't suck? That night's no-holds-barred match between Triple H and The Undertaker. Set up by an awesome silent segment on Raw and fueled by Taker's retirement of Shawn Michaels the year before, both of these icons went hell for leather, possibly because of the heated nature of the match, but almost certainly because they knew they needed to save this stinker of a pay-per-view. Amongst the litany of great moments, one stands out for its impact, choreography, and originality. Hunter was on jelly legs on the ring steps just in front of the announcers area, so the Phenom decided to charge at his opponent with full force. The Cerebral Assassin was ready though, catching Taker in a gorgeous spinebuster that drove both men through the desk behind them as the crowd went bonkers. This happened like 8 minutes into the match, which is nuts when you consider that they wrestled for almost half an hour. A sudden strike that was executed to perfection and caught everyone off guard, this spinebuster was easily the move of the night, which admittedly isn't saying much. Number 1, Foley's famous fall. We debated not including this, as it's more of a Hell in a Cell spot than a table spot, but then we remembered that without the table being involved, Mick Foley probably wouldn't be above ground today. I mean, do we really need to go over what happened at King of the Ring 1998? Taker and Mankind climb the cell, Taker throws Mankind off the cell, good God almighty, home in time for tea. It is one of the greatest wrestling moments of all time, even if I did just sum it up in a couple of stupid lines. The fact that Mick took this fall through the announce desk is lost on most viewers, who are probably concerned with the spectacle of the moment, but Foley's choice of landing spot went a long way to reducing some of the damage from this terrifying tumble. Obviously that was undone when he got chokeslammed through the cell itself, but still, watching the table disintegrate on impact gives a sense of just how dangerous this stunt was, and seeing Mick crushed beneath the wreckage only adds to the drama. The cell might get all the glory when it comes to this spot, but without the trusty announce table, it wouldn't be what it is today.